Hi everyone. So currently time check is 11:58. We will start on the dot at 12 p.m. At the meantime, you can just take a look at our current looping slides to see our house rules as well as the synopsis for the topics today. Yep. Okay, see you at 12. Hey, thank you everyone for being on time. Okay, so it's 12 p.m. We will start the webinar for today. So thank you everyone for taking the time today to join us for our second Health Talk series from Dietitian Day 2023. So before I hand the time over to our wonderful speakers, I would like to share with everyone the house rules for today. So if you have any questions along the way, you can use the Q&A button below at the bottom of your screen and type in your questions. Our speaker will address them during the Q&A session. So we will have a midway Q&A for our first topic, followed by a combined Q&A session at the end of the whole sharing session. So if you have questions along the way, please feel free to submit them. And then if it's possible, our speakers will also type the answer if they are able to. Okay, and then at the end of our session, we will also have our online feedback form to help us improve our future talks. Okay, so without further ado, we will start. I will now hand the time over to our very first speaker for today, and Ms. Priscilla Darmawirya, Senior Dietitian from PTSH Nutrition and Dietetics Department, to start off with the first topic, eating right to lower cancer risk. So Priscilla, please.
Okay, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. So today I'll be speaking about eating right to lower cancer risk. Okay, so so just off a disclaimer, the food products demonstrated in this presentation are only used for examples and doesn't represent the hospital's preference or recommendations for any product brand. Okay, and also, the information shared in today's talk may not be actually applicable for patients who are undergoing active treatment or those who are like struggling to eat enough or are at risk of undesirable weight loss and malnutrition, okay, because that can actually affect your treatment tolerance and survival. So this is more about cancer prevention, okay? So there are many environmental and lifestyle factors that can affect one's cancer risk. So one very modifiable one is actually diet and nutrition. So actually having a good diet it's actually found to actually be able to reduce cancer risk by 10 to 20%, which is something, right? Better than nothing. So the focus of this talk will be to reduce the cancer risk through good nutrition. Okay, so for today's talk, we'll just be going through these three main points: cancer in Singapore and globally, nutritional guidelines for cancer prevention, how to lower cancer risk through good nutrition. Then I'll just be going through some very common cancer-related dietary myths. Okay, so cancer in Singapore and globally. So just some statistics to start off. Cancer is actually the second leading cause of death worldwide, accounting for about one-sixth of all deaths in 2020. And in 2020 alone, there are actually 19.3 million new cancer cases and 10 million deaths alone due to cancer. So it's quite a large number, isn't it? So globally, the leading cancer type in 2020, okay, this is the latest stats that you can find. For females, it's actually breast cancer. Second most common cancer is colorectal cancer. For males, it's actually lung cancer, followed by prostate cancer. So you can see these are very common cancers globally, but how about in Singapore? Okay, in Singapore alone, during the period of from 2016 to 2020, there were about 80,800 cases of cancer reported in Singapore. And similarly, in Singapore, the highest number of cancers, the most common one in females is actually breast cancer. For males, it's actually colorectal cancer. So similar-ish to what you see globally. Okay, so now I'll just be going into more depth about the nutritional guidelines for cancer prevention. Okay, so these are guidelines from the American Institute of Cancer Research and World Cancer Research Fund, and it's most recently updated in 2018. Okay, so again, before we start on them, it's very important to know that the dietary guidelines for cancer prevention do not necessarily apply for those who are undergoing active treatment or for those who are struggling to eat well, okay? Okay, so first off, these are the general cancer prevention guidelines. So being of a healthy weight, being active, eating a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits and beans, limiting the consumption of fast foods, foods high in fat, starches or sugars, limiting the intake of red and processed meat, the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages, alcohol consumption. So I'll just be going into these in more detail in the following slides. Okay. So first off, being of a healthy body weight. So how do we know whether we're in a healthy body weight or not? So, you know, BMI, I think a lot of people have heard of this. So how do you calculate it? You put your weight, then you divide by your height times your height. So you type it out, you calculate it out, and the number that you get at the end, if it's somewhere between 18.5 to 22.9, you're in a healthy weight range. Anything lesser, you're underweight. Anything over that, you're either overweight or obese. And this puts you at an increased risk of developing a lot of, not just cancer actually, a lot of different cancers. It's also a lot of other illnesses in life which we may want to avoid, like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. So okay, so some of the cancers that you are at increased risk of when you're overweight. So like esophageal cancer, liver cancer, colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer as well. So being of a healthy weight is actually very important. Okay. So how do you achieve that? Also to engage in physical activity. So there's actually strong evidence that increased physical activity decreases the risk of developing a lot of different cancers, such as colorectal cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer. And also, okay, the evidence varies across different cancer types. So what is actually recommended is, why is that so? Because it decreases your body fat, which helps to alter several chemical and hormone levels in our body, and that can affect the risk of cancer development. So it's also shown to have immune modulatory effects. So what does that mean? It means that it can help us improve the body's immune response, which can also affect the elimination of cancer cells in the body. Okay, so actually, what is the recommendation? So actually, because physical activity is very beneficial for all age groups, regardless of like whether you're 18, 20, 80, you can just choose an exercise or physical activity that suits your interests. Okay, so be it walking, brisk walking, doing tai chi, or like yoga, running at the gym, do what suits you, okay? And aim for at least about 150 minutes of moderately intense physical activity each week. So what counts as moderately intense physical activity? Okay, it's when you engage in a physical activity, you can still talk, but you cannot sing. So if you still can sing, right, work a bit harder, okay? Okay, so next guideline is to have a diet rich in whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and beans. Okay, because there's strong evidence that whole grains and dietary fiber lowers the risk of developing colorectal cancer, one such cancer. Okay, and there's there's evidence that an increased risk of increased consumption of non-starchy vegetables or fruits helps to protect against many other cancers of the GI tract, such as like the stomach, esophagus, and all that. Okay, so how do you achieve that? Look at our healthy plate. Okay, so I think a lot of y'all have seen it before, like probably on like trains, MRTs, a lot of them are like showing this healthy plate. So what exactly does it mean? Maybe we'll zoom in on some components. So one of them is the brown rice and wholemeal bread component. Okay, so the thing is that why is that so? Because the intake of whole grains, which comes from like wholemeal bread, whole grains, it actually contains a lot of cancer protective compounds in there. Okay, and it also helps to lower the cancer risk because there is reduced chronic inflammation from some of the phytochemicals in our whole grains. Okay, so it actually shows that 90 grams of whole grains a day, right, actually reduces the risk of developing colorectal cancer by 17%. That's quite a huge amount, right? And it also helps you keep your weight in a healthier weight range because when you eat more whole grains, you're fuller faster, so you don't have to consume such a large amount to remain full. Okay, and apart from fiber, there's a lot of good vitamins and minerals in there, like vitamin E, phytoestrogens, zinc, antioxidants, and all that. Okay, so a lot of good stuff in there. Okay, so the recommendation is to aim for about 2 to 3 servings a day. What is one serving? Like 2 slices of wholemeal bread, or like half a bowl of whole grain bihun, noodles, pasta, or like rice, half a bowl of wholemeal rice as well, brown rice, sorry, okay, or like 2/3 bowls of uncooked oats. Okay, so other than whole grains, you can also get a lot of good dietary fiber from fruits and vegetables. Okay, sorry, the highlight should be for the fruits and vegetable part. So the recommendation is to have 2 serves of fruits and vegetables a day. So what exactly is 1 serving of fruits or 1 serving of vegetables? Okay, so if you look at your fist, right, 1 fist size is about the size of 1 serving of fruit. Okay, so like 1 small medium apple, orange, 1 wedge of papaya or honeydew or watermelon, or 1 medium banana. So like for small fruits like grapes, berries, it's about 1 handful. So like what a hand can hold. So probably about 10 or 8 depending on the size. Yeah, for vegetables, it's about 1/4 of a plate or about 100 grams cooked weight. Okay. Okay, so next, we aim for lean protein and low-fat dairy. Okay, the highlight should also be for the meat and others part. So what are some examples of whole lean protein or low-fat dairy? So chicken or meat without the skin or without the fat. So the lean part. Okay, eggs, fish, tofu, tau kwa, beans, dal, chickpeas. So because some people may be vegetarians, right? So they can't eat all this. So they can get it from beans and soy products as well. Okay, so there's also a recommendation to limit the intake of red and processed meat because there's strong evidence that the consumption of either red or processed meat can actually increase the risk of developing colorectal cancer. Okay, so for red meat, right, you don't have to cut it out entirely. You just need to limit the intake. So the recommendation is to limit it to less than 500 grams a week. So what is 500 grams? If you look at your palm, right, 1 palm size of meat is approximately 90 grams. So long you don't exceed about 5 palm size portions a week, it's not too much. You're fine. You're okay. Okay. So what exactly constitutes red meat? It would be pork, not just beef. Okay, pork is counted as well. Pork, beef, lamb, mutton, horse meat, goat meat, all that is red meat. Okay. On the other hand, for processed meat, what is processed meat? So it's meat that has been transformed through salting, curing, fermentation, or the addition of a lot of other chemicals. Okay, so examples would include ham, salami, bacon, sausages, chorizo, luncheon meat. So are none allowed. Actually, right, the recommendation is that, okay, to avoid it entirely, because actually the consumption of even a small amount of processed meat, right, actually increases your risk of developing a variety of cancers because it's high in salt. it increases your risk of developing stomach cancer compared to what you might have in like red meat, regular meat. Okay, so apart from the salt, it's also a lot of the added chemicals that are carcinogenic, so means they promote the development of cancer cells. So for red meat, it's reduce it. For processed meat, it's avoid it entirely if possible. Okay, so the next point is for limiting the intake of refined sugars. So why is that? It's because it's empty calories in a way. So often foods which are very high in refined sugars, it doesn't contain a lot of other nutrients apart from being high in sugar, and they're often high in fat as well. So the overconsumption of them can lead to weight gain, which can increase your risk of developing a lot of different cancers, like we mentioned previously when we're overweight, okay, or obese. So some sources to take note of would be like cakes, pastries, ice cream, juice, sweet beverages. It's not like you can't take it at all. It's just don't take too much of it. Don't consume it in excessiveness, right? Okay. So for alcohol, there's actually convincing evidence that an increased intake of alcoholic drink increases the risk of developing a variety of cancers. Okay, because when alcohol breaks down, it forms acetaldehyde, which is a cancer-causing and reactive and there are also a lot of reactive oxygen particles which can damage your DNA and increase the development of cancer. Okay, so actually, a lot of people also ask me, but I thought red wine, isn't it good for health? Isn't it good for your heart? It's tempting to believe, but actually for cancer itself, the answer is no. Consuming red wine is not better for health because alcohol, regardless of the source, is carcinogenic, means it causes cancer. Okay, so actually drinking alcohol regularly, it increases your risk of developing a lot of different cancers, such as breast cancer, esophageal cancer, liver cancer. Okay, so actually the compound in red wine that is very healthy is called resveratrol. So actually this, you don't actually have to get it from red wine alone. You can get it from a variety of other sources like grapes, blueberries, or even cocoa. So eat your grapes, eat your blueberries. You don't need to get it from red wine. Okay, so even the American Health Association doesn't actually recommend people to start drinking red wine for better heart health. So don't start drinking wine just to lower your risk of, I don't know, developing heart disease. Okay, so actually the recommendation is to limit your alcohol intake. For cancer prevention, it's actually recommended to avoid drinking entirely. However, if you still choose to drink, the recommendation, okay, for females, it's to keep it to maximum 1 standard drink a day. For males, it's maximum 2 standard drinks a day. So what is 1 standard drink? It's about 1 can of regular beer, or if it's wine, it's about half a glass. If it's for spirits, it's about roughly 1 shot, not anything more than that. So consuming too much regularly, right, really does increase your risk of developing a variety of cancers. So instead, what we would suggest is maybe for celebratory events where we maybe have to drink a bit more, you can consider having some alcohol-free beer or alcohol-free wine. It's found very commonly in our supermarkets nowadays. And it tastes almost very close to alcohol containing beer or wine. Also consider mixing your spirits with sugar-free mixers to reduce the alcohol content of your drink and also your overall alcohol consumption. Okay, next, we'll just move on to some very common things that people hear about cancer and diet. Okay, so the first one, I think a lot of y'all might have probably heard. So will sugar cause my cancer cells to grow faster? What do you think? Yes? No? Maybe you have some time to think about it. Okay, so it's tempting to believe, but no, it's not true at all. Okay, so actually there is no research that has shown that sugar intake directly causes cancer progression. Okay, because it's important to note that a lot of the research done out there is done from cancer cells that have been removed from the human body, feeding it sugar, okay, not in actual live human body. So cutting the sugar off your diet, right, doesn't actually restrict the sugar from being brought to the cancer cells in the body. Because when you consume sugar, it goes to every single cell in the body, healthy or cancer cells. It goes everywhere. There's no way of controlling it, okay? So sugar is actually also found in a lot of healthy foods, like sugar, like fruits or vegetables. And they're actually, all these foods, right, they contain a lot of good vitamins and minerals, which also have been linked to lowering the risk of developing cancer. So actually the recommendation when we said previously to reduce your excessive intake of sugar, it's because all these free and simple sugars, which are like from drinks, if you take too much of it, it can lead to weight gain, which can increase the risk of developing cancer. So actually, when you're actually having cancer itself, when you're undergoing treatment and you're actually struggling to eat well, you actually do need to take foods with some sugar in it to get some energy, okay? So you don't need to worry about it. Consuming sugar or carbohydrates doesn't actually lead to cancer progression, okay? So don't worry about it. You can take sugar-containing foods, some sugar-containing foods, okay? Okay, the next one that some people ask, right, is an acidic diet causes cancer. So should I instead drink a lot of alkaline water because this will neutralize the cancer? Do you think this works? What do you think? Okay, it's tempting to believe, but again, no. Okay, okay, so it is a fact that cancer cells, right, they can actually survive in an acidic environment. It's true, and it can't survive in an alkaline environment. However, our body's pH, right, levels are actually regulated by organs like our kidneys. So there's no way that whatever we eat or drink, right, can actually affect the body's pH because the organs are just going to regulate it back to whatever it should be. Okay, so if you drink a lot of lemon, you drink a lot of orange, you drink a lot of acidic, eat a lot of acidic foods, right? Your body is not going to get more acidic. Drink a lot of alkaline water, your body is not going to get more alkaline. So actually makes no difference. Everything that's excessive in alcohol, or I mean, sorry, acid or alkaline will just be removed in the urine. Okay. Okay, so the next one. Some people have asked, should I go on a vegetarian diet? Because it's beneficial for cancer patients, right? Because cancer patients can't eat meat. It causes cancer. Do you think that's right? It's not true because actually vegetarian diets, okay, so if it's not planned well, if it's not prepared healthily, it can actually still be very high in fat and sugar. Okay, so what would be better would be to avoid excessive meat intake. Okay, so because so avoiding excessive meat intake does reduce certain cancers. However, it's not advised to stop it entirely because a lot of certain minerals and vitamins are still better absorbed from animal products compared to vegetarian vegetable products. And poorly planned vegetarian diets, right, can contribute to an imbalance of nutrients. So you can be lacking in protein or lacking in iron and vitamin B12 and zinc and all that. So instead, the recommendation would be to have a healthy, balanced diet, rich in fruits and vegetables, with a moderate amount of lean meat instead. Okay, so like because we mentioned previously, iron and vitamin B12, they're a lot more readily absorbed from animal products compared to plant-based products. Okay. Okay. Next one. Marinating meat, poultry, fish can actually reduce the formation of cancer-causing substances when you cook them. This is true. It is true, yes, because if you marinate meat, poultry, and fish, right, for at least about 30 minutes or so, it can reduce the formation of heterocyclic amines, which are cancer-causing substances, okay? So instead, we recommend that you use a variety of herbs, spices to flavor your meat, poultry, and fish. So you don't have to get a flavor from like fat. So it actually reduces the risk of developing a lot of cancer. So marinate it well, marinate your food well before you cook them. Okay. Next one, eating burnt or charred meat can cause cancer. This one a lot of people hear, right? Because like when I barbecue food, they all try to scrape off all the charred bits. It's actually true. So yeah, continue to scrape it off. Continue to not overcook your meat, okay, at barbecues, because cooking meat at high temperatures, right, together with the smoke that comes from the grilling, actually really does cause a lot of the cancer-causing substances, these carcinogens develop in your meat. So try to avoid that. best to avoid grilling sausages as well. Just grill your lean meat when you go to barbecue. Okay. So overall, the summary: to reduce your risk of developing cancer, aim to be of a healthy body weight within the healthy body weight range. Try to ensure that you have adequate physical activity throughout the week. So that's about 150 minutes a week of moderately intense physical activity. Okay, if you're just doing leisure walking, that's not enough. Limit the intake of food and drinks which are very high in sugar or saturated fat. Limit the intake of red meat and processed meat. Processed meat, it will be recommended that you cut it out entirely. It will be best. Limit your alcohol intake. And for cancer survivors who are not having any loss of appetite, right, or any loss of weight after treatment, meaning you're eating well, you've completed treatment, your weight is back to baseline, you should follow the following the recommendations as above to reduce the chances of cancer relapsing. Okay, that's all for now. I think these are some of the references. You all can look them up if you have anything you want to find out more about diet and cancer. So that's all that I have for today. You can type in any questions that you have, and try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla. Okay, so I'll just pause here for a very short while to kind of take in more questions. There are a few coming in, so I'll shortly just hand the time over to Priscilla to answer some questions. So if you have anything or any questions relating to cancer, please feel free to type it in. If you can't think of any right now, don't worry. For the second segment, you can still send in your questions. We will have a combined Q&A session at the end of the sharing segment. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just, at your own time, Priscilla, you can answer the questions that is now on the. Okay, so we have a few questions coming in. One of it is from Miss Stephanie. Her question to Priscilla is, what's starchy vegetable and fruits?
Okay, so starchy, not really starchy fruits lah. Okay, starchy vegetables. So like starchy vegetables would mean like yam, sweet potato. Those I would consider more as a starch, not a vegetable. So like what I would encourage you to eat more of would be like green leafy vegetables, or like not, if it's not leafy, I guess it's like cucumber, gourd, those kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. And we have also a question from Eileen, where she asked, what about wine or fruit vinegars? Do we avoid them entirely if we are using them in cooking?
Okay. So for wine, okay, so when you cook, right, often a lot of it evaporates off, so the alcohol is reduced quite a lot. Actually for cancer, we still advise not to use it at all, but I guess if you use in small amounts, it's still not so bad. Fruit vinegars is not alcohol, so I mean, if you want to have it, go ahead, no problem.
Okay. We have another question from Patricia also. So Patricia is asking whether, what about supplements?
Okay, so what about supplements? So I don't know if you mean to ask if like, if I take vitamin pills, would it help prevent cancer? Do you think it probably means that? Maybe.
I think maybe.
Okay, so actually vitamins and minerals, they're better absorbed by the human body from actual food compared to supplements lah. So usually you take the supplements if say your diet is inadequate or imbalanced or insufficient in certain vitamins and minerals. However, we would still encourage that you take it, you try to obtain enough from actual food, because your body absorbs it a lot better compared to from supplements. And I wouldn't rely on taking supplements to reduce your risk of developing cancer lah. No.
Okay. Okay, I think we have another question in the chat that is quite similar to supplements. So since we are talking about supplements, Laura also asked about, does long-term taking of fish oil and vitamin D supplements pose a health risk such as damage to organs?
I would say fish oil, I think if you take it in the recommended amounts, it should be fine. For vitamin D, I'm not very sure. I think, okay, so there's a recommended dose for vitamin D, right? I don't know if Timmy will probably cover that later in her talk.
Yeah, I'll be sharing a little bit more about vitamin D as well as calcium later, when we talk about bone health. But in general, vitamin D, we are able to obtain from our sun. Usually we do try and encourage everyone to get their good amount of vitamin D from the sun or from dietary sources. Supplements are usually more recommended for patients who can't obtain that, or as prescribed by doctors.
Yeah. From getting it from the sun is probably the best source, actually, I would say. Yeah. But you have to make sure that your schedule, from what my lecturer has told me last time, it has to be shorter than your actual height. If not, you're not getting it at the right wavelength.
Okay. So we also have some other questions. There is an anonymous question that asks whether crocodile and bullfrog meat are classified as white or red meat.
To be honest, I'm not very sure actually. Okay, so I would think crocodile meat I think it might be white, right? Yeah, bullfrog. Okay, for amphibians, they are like if you eat frog meat, right? It's white meat. Yeah, because it's usually meat from a mammal that we consider as red meat. Yeah.
Okay. We have another question from Laura also, asking whether it's coffee good for health? Does it cause any illnesses if 2 to 3 cups is taken a day?
Okay, specific to cancer, I'm not very sure. Because, okay, so I would say if you take coffee in moderate amounts, it should be fine. But I don't know if you would develop any heart palpitations if you drink 2 to 3 cups a day. But that one is not really related to cancer lah. That is more due to heart health. I think if you take too much, it might affect your heart health, maybe. I'm not very sure. But if it's as in relating to cancer, there shouldn't really be an issue. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Another anonymous question is, what is best to marinate the meat? How long do we normally marinate it for? Or what is recommended?
Okay, I would say marinate it with herbs and spices. I will avoid, as we know, right? If you take too much salt, it does increase the risk of developing certain cancers. Sugar, too much of it causes weight gain, right? Like too much weight gain. So probably if you marinate your meat in garlic, ginger, herbs, spices, go ahead, be creative. I mean, it's according to the dish that you want to prepare, right? And I guess marination for at least 30 minutes. I mean, if you want the meat to have taste, you should at least marinate it for about minimally 30 minutes. Best to leave it a bit longer to let the flavors seep into your meat. Yeah. I don't have a set time for that. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Joy. I'm not sure if I'm interpreting the question right, but I think what she's trying to ask is, after doing all that you have presented, if there's a genetic kind of cancer in the family, it will still increase their risk of cancer. I think that will be what her question is.
Yeah, it is also important to note that there are a lot of different things that can affect your risk of developing cancer, right? So it's an entire lifestyle that you need to look at, and as well as your family genes. Because family genes is one thing, your stress levels, your physical activity, your weight, your eating, your drinking, your diet, your smoke, if you smoke or not, everything affects your risk of developing cancer. So there are people that are very healthy and still develop cancer, unfortunately, due to family history. It's very hard to say. So, I mean, if you don't really have any family history, so there are certain things that you can make changes in your lifestyle that can affect your risk. So yeah, I guess sometimes after doing all that, if there's a genetic risk, you can also develop it
Okay. So a question from Patricia is also that whether it's apple cider good to maintain our health, what amount to take and recommended? Do we take it before meal? Awesome.
Apple cider vinegar. Okay, I would say there isn't really much research around or information surrounding apple cider in cancer. I would say it's a bit more to do with health, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a bit more research and information done surrounding apple cider and heart health. I don't think there's enough research or evidence done to tell you exactly how much to take, whether it's before or after meals. Yeah, there's no actual amount there, but I guess you want to occasionally take it. There isn't really a risk. Yeah, but as for exact amounts, I can't really tell you.
We still have quite a bit of questions coming in, so we have time. Let's answer them. So we have an anonymous question also. What about green tea and cancer prevention?
Okay, so there isn't actual research that shows that green tea can prevent cancer, okay? But there are a lot of good antioxidants in green tea that may potentially reduce the risk of developing a variety of cancers. Yeah, so it may help, but I cannot tell you with actual research and actual numbers and proof that it will help.
Okay. We have another question from Patricia. She asked, what about plant-based meat? Is that considered processed food? Is it good for us to take that to replace meat?
Okay, so I would say actually plant-based meats, right? It's important to also look at how processed it is, what kind of chemicals go into it, right? Because I mean, there are a lot of companies out there. I mean, it's becoming a thing, right? Like it's becoming quite a fad to produce plant-based meats. So sometimes to help the meat taste a bit better, a lot of chemicals are added in to alter the taste or the nutritional value of it. So sometimes it depending on what they add in, it may or may not potentially increase your risk of developing cancer. I would say it's often quite high in salt too, due to help with the taste. So I wouldn't say it is. I would not use it entirely to replace your meat intake. I would still rely on a lot of animal-based protein like tofu, soy. Soy is a very good source of protein, and it's quite the bioavailability is okay. It's okay. So I would say you can take it, but I wouldn't take it in excessive amounts to replace meat entirely, protein entirely in your diet.
Okay. We have a question from John. He thanks you for actually sharing your thought. He is asking whether it is okay to cook fried eggs in extra virgin olive oil without reaching the smoking point, because he eats up to 6 egg whites and about 2 egg yolks per day. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, without hitting the smoking point, I don't know, but I would think that you like the taste of egg with extra virgin. I mean, I don't know. I prefer it with light olive oil because light olive oil also has a slightly higher smoking point, but I guess if you don't hit the smoking point, it's okay. 6 egg whites are fine, no problem. About 2 egg yolks a day. Okay, so I don't know. Are you trying to test about cholesterol here? I'm not very sure what the egg white and the egg yolk part is about, but I would say if your cholesterol levels are fine with this amount of eggs, it should be okay, because it's a very controversial topic lah. I would say the egg yolk consumption and cholesterol intake. Yeah.
Okay. We do see quite a bit of questions coming in relating to calcium, which I think we can leave this to the second Q&A when we answer after understanding a little bit more about calcium and bone health and all also. So we may focus a little bit more on the cancer kind of related question. We have one question from Chinyo. They ask whether baking sliced potato in oven at a high temperature is that recommended, as the starch in the potato actually turns into some harmful substance.
No, it doesn't. Don't worry about that. I think you need to ensure that the potato is cooked well, because if you don't cook the potato enough, the starch, I don't think it's going to break down sufficiently. You might get a stomach ache, so please do cook it high enough, but just don't burn it. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Patricia. She asked whether cancer patients and survivors, can they eat bird nest and ginseng?
Okay. I would say if you are not on treatment, specifically chemotherapy, right? I would say it should be okay. But if you're on chemotherapy, actively still undergoing chemotherapy, if you're eating bird's nest from the bottle, like those kind, right? Usually they are raw, as in they're not heat treated. So it's considered raw. So I would avoid that unless you're actually getting the raw bird nest and you're cooking yourself. You're ensuring that it's entirely cooked, it's not raw or potentially undercooked because the bird saliva is there. I would avoid it. Okay. For ginseng, right? I would encourage you to check with. I would say avoid, but do check with your pharmacist, your doctor, if you are concerned and you wish to consume it, because there may be potential drug nutrient interactions. I cannot say for sure. Yeah, if you are taking like some PCM, yeah, do check with your practitioner. But I mean, if you're only undergoing radio, usually there isn't any issue there.
Okay. We have an anonymous question. They are asking whether is it better to eat our fruits before or after our meals?
It doesn't matter. You can eat anytime. It doesn't affect your absorption of anything. It's okay.
Okay. Another question from Gloria is whether egg mayo and tuna sandwich from Subway is considered as a processed food.
Okay, I wouldn't consider mayonnaise processed food. Tuna, okay, so the only thing to note is that tuna usually is okay, but the thing is that okay, canned tuna, right? If you buy the kind that has been it's not canned in extra oil, olive oil, or like green or curry or whatever. It's actually okay because you just break the tuna. You're not actually adding anything to change the nutrient composition, or you're adding like new chemicals into the tuna. So that's okay, but it's just I don't know what they might add if you have it from a bag from somewhere else. You can't control the food, what's added to your food. But I would say it's a better choice compared to choosing like the milk, the one with a lot of salami and bacon and all that. Yeah.
Okay. We have an anonymous question again. They are asking what oil is healthier for making bread in bread making machine.
Okay, I don't make bread in a bread making machine, but I can tell you when I make bread, like knead it, right? I would say olive oil usually lends it a bit of a taste, so probably go for a neutral tasting oil like canola oil or sunflower oil. They're quite neutral tasting. The heat, it's quite heat safe, so usually it should be fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla. Yes, so we will now proceed to the next segment due to the time. So if you have more questions that are cancer related, don't worry, you still can submit them. We will answer that at the end of the segment. So for now, I will hand the time over to our next speaker. So I mean, you already met her during the Q&A session, but yes, so she is Miss Yeo Chi Mei. She's a senior dietitian from TTSH N&D department to share with you more on foods that are optimal for bone health and muscle mass. So Chi Mei, you can take over.
Okay, so give me a moment. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Chi Mei. So today I'll be sharing a little bit more about food, the importance of food for bone health and muscle mass. Okay, so in today's session, okay, what I'll be covering is a little bit more about bone health for us to all understand bone mass across the ages. We will also look a little bit into osteopenia and osteoporosis before coming to how we can optimize our bone health and muscle mass with a well-balanced diet, adequate calcium and vitamin D intake, adequate protein intake, as well as exercise. Okay, so why do we actually need to discuss a little bit about bone or understand why bone is important? It's because bones are rigid hard tissue that plays a critical role in giving our body form and shape. They actually protect our internal organs like our brain, heart from injury. Our bones also store minerals such as calcium and phosphorus, which actually helps to keep our bones strong. And bones should last us an entire lifetime, and with life expectancy now much higher, it actually makes good sense for us to learn to build up and strengthen our bones. Okay, in this graph here, I just wanted to also share with everyone, because this graph actually shows us the bone mass across our age. So depending on your age right now, you could be at different levels of your bone health may also vary. Okay, and this is because bones are actually made of living tissue. So bones are actually made of living tissues, and nutrition actually supports the continuous formation of new bones to actually replace the continuous loss of old bones throughout our life. Okay, and the maximum period, for us to actually store more bone mass is between the age of 20 to 30, where we actually replace more bones more quickly than when we lose it. But as we grow older, our bone loss outpaces our bone formation. That is when, for individuals around above the age of 50, for women above the age of 50, and for men above the age of 65, they actually start using up their calcium deposit faster than they can save. And that's when bone loss or bone tissue loss usually occurs. So it is normal for all of us to lose some bone mass as we age. But if we do not take steps to keep our bones healthy, we can lose too much bones, and that actually increases our risk of osteoporosis from developing. Okay, and it's also important to note that in a recent study in 2019, right, osteoporotic hip fractures in women found that in women above 50 were actually 8 times more common than breast cancer in Singapore. So if you recall, I think Priscilla shared just now that breast cancer is one of the more common cancers for female in Singapore. And now that I'm sharing that osteoporotic hip fractures are 8 times more common than that, that actually shows that we really need to try and do something to reduce our risk of osteoporosis and osteoporotic fractures. Okay, and so normally osteopenia and osteoporosis, it is a diagnosis made by the doctors, usually after an individual does a bone mineral density test. And what this test does is that it tests your bone mineral density and compares it to that of an established norm or standard to give you a score. So osteopenia is a condition when an individual's bone density is actually lower than usual for their age, whereas for osteoporosis, it's a more severe case of bone loss that actually weakens the bones and decreases the strength, resulting in an increased risk of fracture for this group of individuals. Okay, it is important also to know that not everybody who has osteopenia will develop osteoporosis. Low bone mass is an important risk factor for osteoporotic fractures, which also points us to the point that we would want to try and strengthen our bone health so that we can slow down our rate of developing osteopenia and eventually developing osteoporosis in future. Okay, so knowing a little bit of osteoporosis, what it actually means is that it is actually our bones being a little bit more porous, where our density and the quality of our bones are reduced. Okay, so we do have some pictures on the slides. Okay, so if you were look at the left kind of bone structure, that is actually a healthy bone. The one towards your right, that is an osteoporotic bone. And why is it an osteoporotic bone? It's because you can see that the walls of the honeycomb, they are smaller than the healthier ones, and the space between the bones are actually larger as well. You can't see it here, but the outer shell of our bones also get thinner when you do have osteoporosis, and all this actually makes our bones slightly weaker. And as the disease progresses, this actually increases our risk of fractures as well. Okay, osteoporosis is also known as a silent disease because in the early stages, you normally don't see or feel anything. But towards the later years, you may experience back pain. You may also feel yourself having a hunched posture or a rounded posture because of the curving of your spine due to osteoporosis, or you may even experience a fracture of the hip, spine, or wrist, which are common also in Singapore. Okay, so in a recent speech by Minister Ong, he also did address the economic and personal burden of osteoporotic fractures in Singapore, because he found, he also shared that the incidence of osteoporotic fracture is projected to actually increase by about 60%, from more than 15,200 in 2017 to more than 24,000 in 2035. This actually translates into higher economic and personal burden, which is why he also emphasized that we should be doing something to actually address our risk as well. Okay, and in a particular 2019 study, local study, they actually found that Chinese women had a 1.4 and a 1.9 higher fracture rates than Malay and Indian women respectively. And this is mainly because, And this is mainly because these Chinese women were more susceptible to hip fractures due to their lower rate of BMI, where lower obesity or lower obesity or lower BMI, it's actually associated with lower bone mineral density, thus increasing their risk of osteoporosis. So the next question comes to how do we then achieve maximum bone growth? Okay, so remember that our most important ages are between 20 to 30, okay, but that doesn't mean that after we have passed that 30 years of age, then we don't do anything to help support our bone health, because do always remember that our bone is continuously growing also, because it's a live tissue. So we should still try to encourage a healthy lifestyle, okay, make sure that we are getting a balanced diet with a good amount of calcium and vitamin D from it. We should also aim for adequate protein intake, and also try to reduce the food or beverages that can increase our bone loss. So these may include caffeine, salt, alcohol, and overall to also avoid smoking if it's possible. And if we strengthen that with a little bit of weight-bearing exercise like brisk walking and dancing, that can also help to strengthen our muscle and bone health as well. Okay, so this shouldn't come as anything new to you. Priscilla did go through a little bit about My Healthy Plate, but My Healthy Plate is basically a kind of a guideline that we will hope that most of you are actually following as well, because the main principles of having this healthy plate is that it encourages a wide variety of nutrients across the different food groups and make sure that we're getting the good variety of them. Okay, this is because, let's say, if we focus on the brown rice and wholemeal bread, it is a very good source of energy and dietary fiber. It is also a very good source of vitamin B, E, and minerals such as iron, zinc, magnesium, and phytochemicals. Now, these food and nutrients, especially energy and magnesium, are very required to actually support bone health and nutrition as well. Okay, a quarter of our plate should also come from our meat and others. So why do we need to prioritize a quarter plate to our meat and others? It's because they are a very good source of protein. Now, protein has been found to help build and strengthen our muscles. It can also help to improve our immunity. And protein actually makes up 50% of our bone volume and approximately 1/3 of its mass. So that will make good sense that why we need to emphasize a little bit more on protein, because if we don't, then we could be influencing our bone volume and bone mass as well. Okay, and protein is also a good source of phosphate, which helps us to maintain good bone health. Okay, so for fruits and vegetable wise, we should all be a little bit aware of all the vitamins, minerals, and dietary fiber that it does contain. Overall, it does give us a very good variety of them, and it can also help to prevent constipation, heart diseases, stroke, and some cancer. Okay, so overall, when we do aim for an adequate balanced diet, okay, with a quarter plate of whole grains, a quarter plate of meat and others, half a plate of fruits and vegetables, we will actually be equipping ourselves with a mixture and wide variety of nutrients, macro and micro, to actually support overall health and well-being. Okay, and in particular, when we do take a well-balanced diet, we are also giving ourselves adequate calcium, protein, phosphorus, magnesium, vitamin D, K, and C, and all these are essential in helping to support our bone health as well. Okay, so moving on to calcium. So calcium is a nutrient that every one of us would know when we talk about bone health. So why is it important? It's because when we talk about our bone, protein actually provides the structural matrix of the bone, whereas calcium is actually the dominant mineral within that matrix. Okay, so adequate calcium intake is actually important to help keep our bone healthy and help minimize the risk of osteoporosis from happening. So how much calcium is enough? Okay, so this is based on the Singapore dietary guidelines. Okay, so it is recommended that for adolescents between the age of 10 to 18, they take up to 1,000 mg of calcium a day. Okay, for adults between 19 to 50, 800 mg of calcium is adequate. And this is because if you recall back at the graph, when we are still younger per se, we still are able to have a little bit of calcium stores in our body, meaning that we still want you to take enough, but it doesn't have to be a lot more. Okay, which is why 800 mg is recommended for adults between 19 to 50. But as we progress and as we age above 51 years and above, or if we are, let's say, breastfeeding or pregnant, our requirements for calcium will go back up to that 1,000 mg a day. Okay. So what does that mean in terms of our food now? Okay, so these are just some pictures of where we may find calcium, okay, or sources of calcium in our diet. Okay, as a general rule of thumb, remember that we're aiming for about 800 to 1,000 mg of calcium a day. Okay, this is actually equivalent to about 8 to 10 stars of calcium a day. So for those who prefer to look at shapes instead of numbers, you can also look at the stars. What we want to aim for is about 8 to 10 stars or 800 to 1,000 mg of calcium a day. Okay, so based on this photo, or this slide, what we do notice is that our highest sources of calcium actually come from our high calcium low fat milk or high calcium soy milk. And if, let's say, we think about it realistically, if we do take if anyone does take like 2 cups of, or maybe it could be a cup of high calcium low fat milk and a cup of high calcium soy milk a day, so 2 cups of it, that would simply meet our requirements, our daily recommendations of having that 1,000 mg of calcium a day. Okay. Otherwise, if you are not very keen to take up to that 2 cups of calcium a day, we can still make do with other food sources of calcium to actually meet our requirements. Okay, so these may come from like 2 tablespoons of non-fried dried ikan bilis, or it can be a piece of low sodium canned sardine, or it can be a small tub of low-fat yogurt or yogurt drink, or otherwise it can come from also our bread if they are high calcium white bread or vegetables as well. Okay, so if let's say you don't take that 2 cups of milk and you still want to meet your daily recommended calcium intake, I think what we can also try for, or maybe a suggestion, would be when you're looking and shopping for your bread, you can look for those high calcium white bread. And in the morning, if let's say you're taking like 2 slices of those bread, you can pair it with like maybe a piece of low sodium canned sardine. Okay, and that would already give you about 600, okay, or about 6 stars of calcium a day. So then what is lacking in your diet is another 2 to 4 stars, okay, which you can couple that with maybe a small tub of yogurt, okay, which isn't, the volume is not a lot, okay, but that itself, the calcium that you get from these food will help you to meet your 800 mg of calcium a day, at least minimally. Okay, and if you do a little bit more in terms of having vegetables at your main meals, like your lunch and dinner, a serving of that will also give you the additional calcium that you can get from there. All right. So we do also understand and appreciate okay, that in Singapore, we do have a few of our community members that are lactose intolerant. So when individuals are lactose intolerant, they tend to avoid dairy products as it may cause bloating and diarrhea for them. But we still want them to eat their, adequate calcium intake and not just to stay away from high calcium food just because it has lactose. We can always find alternative, okay, which are, for example, these kinds of food. So instead of taking a dairy product that may cause you diarrhea or bloating, what you can aim for is maybe tau gua. A block of tau gua actually gives you around 500 mg. So if let's say at lunch and dinner, you're taking 1 block of tau gua each, okay, that already simply meets your 1,000 mg of calcium a day. Otherwise, you can also opt for a cup of calcium fortified soy milk, oat milk, almond milk. So those are up and coming things that you can also find in the market. Otherwise, green leafy vegetable, half a cup of green leafy vegetables also do contribute a little bit of calcium in there. Okay, so these are still strategies that we can consider, okay, whether you're lactose intolerant or not, to still meet your daily requirements of calcium. Okay, after talking and understanding more about calcium, we also need to touch base on vitamin D. Okay, so why vitamin D? It's because vitamin D is required by our body for the absorption of calcium and maintenance of bone structure. Okay, so if you have not heard me just now during the Q&A, we have briefly mentioned about the main source of vitamin D, which comes from our sun. Okay, so actually the sun is the best way to get vitamin D from. It's a free and easy way. You just need to put yourself out there, literally. So Health Hub for Singapore actually recommends us exposing our arms and legs in the sun twice a week for about 5 to 30 minutes, anytime between 10 to 3. And that gives our body or our skin enough time to actually produce the vitamin D that we need. Okay, so we do understand that Singapore weather is slightly warmer. Okay, so this recommendation has already taken that into consideration, where we are only recommending that 5 to 30 minutes. Okay, definitely don't go more than that also, or end up sun tanning or sunbathing yourself, because that could also have some health risks associated with that lah. Okay, if let's say, for example, you're not able to obtain the vitamin D from our dear sun, okay, what we can then do is look at it through our food. Okay, more often than not, you may find vitamin D fortified products to actually receive our vitamin D, adequate vitamin D a day. So that could come from like vitamin D fortified margarine, cereal, cheese, or milk. Otherwise, more natural occurring ones could come from oily fish or soy milk. We can also obtain a little bit of vitamin D from our egg yolk and liver. But I also wanted to draw attention to that because yesterday when my colleague shared, Lynette shared on cholesterol, hypercholesterol and all that, she did also bring up the point that egg yolk, liver are high in dietary cholesterol lah. Okay, so even when opting for sources of vitamin D from our diet, do try to go for the healthier sources to avoid putting ourselves at risk also of developing any chronic conditions lah. Okay, right. So after understanding, so we mentioned about calcium, we mentioned about vitamin D. So now we need to play a little bit more focus on protein, because remember that protein makes up about 50% of our bone volume and gives us about 1/3 of its mass. It also helps to build and strengthen our muscle. So the next key thing that we need to address is protein. How much protein should we be then taking? Okay, so before we move towards the amount, the serving size of protein that we should be aiming a day, we should firstly look at the sources of protein that we can obtain it from. Okay, so that may include our meat and poultry, our fish, our nuts, our beans, our legumes, our eggs, our dairy products. So these are good sources of protein that we will want to encourage everyone to take, and try to avoid those processed meat or fatty meat, which Priscilla also has mentioned, because they can affect our health risks also lah, in terms of cancer and all that. Okay, so try to choose the lean kinds of meat, the healthier kinds of meat. Even when cooking, choose lower fat cooking methods. And if possible, try to include calcium-rich protein food sources a day, so that when you take those kind of calcium-rich protein food sources, you are taking protein and calcium both at the same time lah. Okay, and that helps to ensure that you meet your calcium requirements also. Okay, so how much protein should we actually be taking then? Okay, so coming back to the healthy plate, remember that we want to be aiming for a quarter plate of meat and others. So if we follow this healthy plate as recommended, okay, and we take a quarter plate of our meat and others 2 to 3 times a day, okay, that actually meets our daily recommendation. Okay, we don't need to be taking more than that. We don't need to be, not recommended to take less than that. Okay, but following this healthy plate, taking a quarter of it 2 to 3 times, that meets our requirements. Okay, and that should be what we all aim for every day as well. For elderly though, over the age of 50, we should try and aim for that strict 3 servings of protein to actually slow down the loss of muscle mass, as well as muscle function, as muscle mass and muscle function. Okay, so aiming for that strict about 3 serving of protein, that will help. Okay, so how much is 1 serving of protein? Okay, so this one also previously shared. Okay, one serving of protein may include a palm size of meat, fish, or poultry. We would normally recommend everyone to do it based on your own palm. Okay, because your palm may be different from the next person beside you. Okay, but use that as your own gauge to see whether that is adequate. So when looking at aiming for adequate protein, we're aiming for about, if let's say we're talking about meat and fish, it's about 2 to 3 palm size of meat or fish a day. Okay, otherwise you can look at having 2 cups of reduced fat milk. That is also 1 serving of protein, or 2 small blocks of soft beancurd. Okay, otherwise, other sources of food of protein may include like 3/4 cups of cooked pulses. Let's say, for example, our peas, our bean, our lentils, our dal. So for our Indian community, also when you do take dal, or you follow some for individuals following a vegetarian diet, then our pulses are going to be our main source of protein, which means that at lunch and dinner, we do want to try and encourage the appropriate portion of it also, to make sure that you're getting your enough protein intake. Otherwise, we can look at eggs or prawns also to help meet our protein requirements. Okay, so now let's try and put it all together. I know I've discussed quite a bit of things. Okay, I've mentioned a healthy plate. I've mentioned getting enough calcium, vitamin D, as well as protein, right? So I just wanted to put this slide together to see how we can then make it work or make our diet plan lah. Okay. But I just want to also share that this is not the only plan that you can go with. Definitely, if you can come up with other varieties of meals that still make sure that you meet your daily calcium and protein intake while maintaining a healthy, balanced diet, then that is also fine to continue. Okay. But I just wanted to give some examples so that we can know that it's possible for us to actually meet our requirements through a healthy, balanced diet also. Okay, so for breakfast, what we can possibly take is maybe like 2 calcium fortified bread with a cup of maybe no added sugar or less sugar, high calcium soy milk. Okay, so when we do this, we are giving ourselves, at breakfast, we're already giving ourselves half a portion of protein, and we're also making sure that we get enough calcium from there. And if let's say we really do take this for breakfast, that itself already meet our calcium requirements for the day, where we are taking about 900 mg of calcium from here itself. Okay, and then comes lunch. Okay, what could be an option for all of us? Could be mixed vegetable rice with 2 vegetables and 1 meat. We do try and ask for lesser gravy if possible, because that is a healthier method. Otherwise, if you can and are okay with avoiding gravy in total, then that's more than welcome with us also lah. Okay, so do try to follow a healthy, balanced diet. But with our lunch option over here, we can see that we are still aiming for that 1 serving of protein at lunch. And we're also encouraging a little bit of calcium from our vegetables, our green leafy vegetables as well. Okay, dinner can be something similar to lunch if you don't mind being similar, being kind of similar. Otherwise, if you want to have a noodle, we would recommend like maybe a noodle soup, because usually when you have a soup option over a dry option, that actually helps to reduce the amount of fat and salt that you're actually taking with the meal. Okay, so let's say, for example, dinner or lunch could be actually a sliced fish bihun or noodle soup, where you ask a little bit more vegetables. Now, when you eat this food also, focus on the carbohydrate, which is coming from the noodles, focus on the protein, and focus on the vegetables. Try to avoid the soup. Okay, so these are just some examples of what your meal plan could be. Okay, but definitely not limited to all this only. All right. Now that we have understand a little bit more about what helps to strengthen, okay, our bone health and muscle mass, okay, we also need to address the factors that may increase our bone loss, okay, because these are things we want to be limiting in our diet so that we are not putting ourselves at risk of osteoporosis also. Okay, so the first thing that we want to address is to avoid high salt diet. Okay, so this one was probably shared by Lynette yesterday also, where we want to avoid sodium, too much sodium to avoid hypertension. Okay, but sodium also plays a role in, if we eat too much sodium, it also plays a role in actually increasing our calcium loss, which is associated with a lower bone mineral density lah. Okay, so in general, we are still aiming for less than 5 grams of salt a day, which is equivalent to a teaspoon of salt. Okay, and that includes any meal that you take at home or outside. Okay, which is why if you need to flavor your food or season your food, it is best to go for herbs, spices to reduce our use of sodium or processed sauces to actually flavor them. Okay, second factor that will increase our bone loss is caffeine. Okay, so why caffeine? Is because caffeine can actually increase our calcium losses in our urine. It can also decrease our calcium absorption. And caffeinated sodas, such as our cola drinks, they also contain both caffeine and phosphoric acid, which actually draws calcium from our bones. Okay, so caffeine is something that, if possible, we try and reduce the amount when we're looking at bone health as well. Okay, the third thing that actually increases our bone loss is actually when we smoke or take too much alcohol. Okay, and why? Is because when we smoke, we are actually keeping our body from using the calcium in our diet, okay, which is not good when we're trying to optimize our bone health. Okay, and alcoholic drinks wise, right, it can be known to be damaging to our bone and can put us at risk of falling also. Let's say if we do take alcoholic drinks, sometimes it may cause us to fall, right? Excessive amount of alcohol can also decrease our bone formation and affect our body's ability to actually absorb calcium. Okay, which is why overall, when we are looking at bone health, limiting the alcohol intake is the best for bone health. Okay, right. So those are more of the dietary strategies that we want to be making sure that everyone is aware of. Okay, another component of strengthening our bones, bone health and muscle mass is when we do a little bit of exercise. Okay, and why exercise is important is because it actually helps to increase or maintain our muscle strength. It also helps to improve our balance, coordination, and mobility. It also helps to improve our confidence to actually move about more independently. This can also help to reduce our risk of falls, okay, for those individuals who are at risk of falling down. And it can also improve our mood and overall well-being. Okay, so it is recommended, similar to what Priscilla has shared, to do about 150 minutes of physical activity a week. Do take note that if you haven't been exercising regularly and you are keen to start, do start slow, okay, and let your body rest and recover in between workouts to actually avoid overstraining and injury, okay. And one reason why exercise is important or being shared right now in terms of bone health is because study has shown that physical activities such as weight bearing and resistance training or resistant exercise helps in bone formation and building of strong bones. So these may include activities like brisk walking, dancing, climbing stairs, and resistant exercise like modified push-up. So if you are able to do push-up, then you can do that. For those who have a little bit trouble doing those, you can always maybe place your arms against a wall or a bench and then lower your chest to the surface. So that could be a modified push-up, but it helps to build up your resistance also, your muscle resistance. Okay, otherwise carrying groceries or even just taking a bottle of water and then lifting it up as a weight, that can also help to train your strength. Okay, and this part, this thing is actually a tip, okay, which if let's say you really want to optimize your nutrient, your muscle and bone health, right? What we would recommend is that you take a protein-rich food after your exercise to actually help to build and repair muscle. So this means that after exercising, let's say going for your brisk walking and then you come back home, or even on your way back home after brisk walking, you could always take a cup of milk, soy milk if you're milk or soy milk, or even any dairy product, and that can actually give you that calcium protein to help build and repair your muscles after your exercise. Okay, so in summary, okay, today we have shared and understand a little bit more about our bone health and muscle mass, but overall we do want everyone to aim for a well-balanced diet, aim for adequate calcium and vitamin D intake, adequate protein intake, limit the food beverages that may increase our bone loss, such as salt, caffeinated beverages, smoking or alcohol, and also to aim for adequate amount of exercise, about 150 minutes of physical activity a week as tolerated. Okay. The next few slides is just sharing about a few resources that you can look at, okay, in your own time if you're keen to understand a little bit more. I have, for this presentation, I've actually used resources from all these various websites to actually share back with everyone also lah. Okay, so one of it could be from our TTSH Health Library. So if you go to Tan Tock Seng website itself, we do have a health library. And when you click N under it, you can find a series of nutrition resources that our department has come up with, in which you can find bone health, calcium in your diet, and components of what Priscilla has mentioned also in terms of some healthy eating guidelines as well. And if you search under exercise or E, you can also see a few resources made by, I think, our physiotherapy department, where they share a little bit more about the importance of exercise and the types of exercise that is recommended for everyone. Okay, you could also refer to external resources if you're keen to find out more about calcium in your diet, or to see how you can also understand more about calcium if you have any further questions. Yeah. Okay, with that, I think I come to my end of slides. And I think now it's time for our question and answers.
Yes, okay, thank you, Chi Mei. So we have come to the end of our sharing segment. So our speakers are here to answer. So please submit your questions. I mean, we do see quite a bit coming in, so we will slowly go through them. And maybe we'll just pause it for maybe a 1 minute to have for the speakers to kind of read through the question and select the ones that they want. And then a side note, please be informed that we are unable to give detailed dietary advice for a specific medical condition. So if you have any medical condition related advice, you can look out for customary advice from your own dietitians and your own healthcare team. So we will try our best to answer questions that can benefit the general public as a whole. Okay, so maybe I'll just keep the music on for like maybe 30 seconds. I'll let my speakers review the questions, and then we will see you shortly. Okay, thank you everyone. So now we will start our Q&A session. So Priscilla and Timmy, please.
Okay. Okay, so Timmy, maybe you can answer one of the questions, which is, will taking 1,000 milligrams of calcium affect the heart calcium score in the long run?
I guess that depends also on how much, I mean whether this 1,000 mg of calcium is from a supplement or is it coming from a diet. Because if your diet intake is 1,000 mg of calcium, that wouldn't increase your risk of any calcium score, because that is our recommendation. But if let's say you're taking 1,000 mg of calcium as a supplement on top of the diet, then we may advise you to see whether you are taking also a very high calcium diet. Because in general, we're trying to avoid, there's an upper limit of calcium intake also, which is 2,000 mg of calcium a day. So we also want to avoid reaching that maximum also lah.
Okay. I guess the next one is a bit more general question. We can both chip in. If having taken a multivitamin, which I found out that vitamin B12 is, the dose is like 1,000% of the daily recommended value, and the health check shows that your vitamin B12 is higher than previously. You have stopped taking the vitamin and you have changed to another multivite with less vitamin B12. How do you get rid of the excess B12? After a while, your body just self-regulates and gets rid of it, so you don't need to worry too much about it. Yeah, it's not something that accumulates.
And I would say maybe it would be good to check with your doctors or the one that has recommended you to take the vitamin D, because if it's something that we're afraid of excessive kind of intake, then we also wouldn't want anyone to be taking anything in excess lah. Right? So our body is able to self-regulate, but do check in with your GP to see whether it's necessary to continue that as well.
Okay. Okay, the next one for Timmy would be, coffee and tea contains chemicals which impede the absorption of minerals, such as calcium. That's correct. When should we drink them after our meals?
So it is right.
When
Coffee actually affects our calcium absorption, which was what he shared. Usually we will try and advise coffee to be taken away from our meals, especially if that meal has a bit of calcium in there. So let's say, even that serve of green vegetables that if you are including in your diet, then we'll try and avoid caffeine at that meal. So maybe having caffeine as an afternoon tea, a morning tea away from your main meals may help to improve the absorption of your calcium.
Right, thank you, Timmy. Oh, okay. I eat kimchi okay, sorry, the next question is, I eat kimchi as it is salty. So I rinse it with water. Is it less nutritious? Okay, I guess if you rinse it with water, there is less salt. But I guess a lot of the nutrition that comes from kimchi that a lot of people are looking at is the probiotics, right? But I don't think probiotics, I don't think it's water soluble. I don't think you wash it out. But I guess the less salt is good. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's less nutritious per se, but it's less salty for sure. Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, this one, can sweets be eaten in moderation, or should it be avoided altogether? Would rice be the right substitute for sugar? I don't know if this is more in relation to cancer they're asking. So, I think if it is right, like we mentioned everything in moderation, right? So refined sugar is not that you can't have it at all. It's just that you should have it in moderation. So I wouldn't say you need to avoid it entirely, but if you're taking excessive amounts, don't do that. Rice be the right substitute for sugar. Rice. Okay, I don't know if you're asking if you should eat rice as a snack instead. So maybe I wouldn't eat rice as a snack lah. Maybe something else like bread is also okay. But yeah, rice or all the carbs when broken down contains sugar, but rice doesn't have excessive refined sugar. Yeah, I wouldn't substitute rice for sugar lah. I mean, sugar for rice, whatever. Yeah. Okay, sorry. This question I think is in two parts. Can we eat? I don't know.
Can we eat overnight food kept in the fridge? What types of food should such food to avoid? So I think in general we are able to eat overnight food. Kept in the fridge. You don't really have to. I mean, there's no nutritional issue about it. I think the only one that I can think of is if we're overcooking our food. Or let's say if we're overheating our food again after taking it out from fridge, that may affect some of the nutrient quality of our food. But otherwise, it shouldn't be an issue taking overnight food at all.
No, it doesn't affect your cancer risk. No, but I would say if you are undergoing cancer treatment, please cook your food well when you take it out of the fridge, because there's still a risk of bacteria growing in the fridge. It doesn't stop it entirely. It's quite different from the freezer lah. Yeah. Okay, so next question for
I guess.
okay, yeah, this is quite a general question. So when eating out, it's quite hard to find brown rice and wholemeal noodles. So will eating less of white rice or noodles help diet? I guess this is asking like for weight loss, maybe. I don't know. Or is it healthier maybe?
I think
Like,
maybe more towards like a healthy diet, because we've been asking them to take like
whole grain, whole milk products, right? So in the event when they don't find, then cutting it out will be helpful. I think with respect to this, we wouldn't want you to be cutting out too much of your rice or noodle also, because that could put you at risk of not getting enough nutrients at all. Instead, if let's say there's no option to find brown rice or wholemeal noodles, consider having it as your second meal. So like if let's say lunch is not able to find that kind of option, then maybe dinner, you try and do that kind of option. Otherwise, there are also other options. Let's say, for example, basmati rice, if they do sell at the shop, which is also a healthier option as well.
Yeah, I would also suggest maybe what you can do is to get more fiber in would be to choose more vegetables lah. Like if you at the economy rice store, I mean, if you're gonna end up cutting the carbs, right, the white rice and the noodles, and you're hungry and then you end up snacking on more like ice cream later, that's not great. So I would say if you do want to eat less, then you have to substitute that with something to feel more full, right? So go for more of the lean protein, like add more tofu or add more veggie lah, definitely to help with the satiety. Because actually the benefit from the whole grains are the extra fiber. Okay. So next one I think for Timmy is there a need to take calcium supplements to prevent bone loss?
So I think this one is quite straightforward. I mean, I would say that if you're able to take it from your meals directly, like how we've mentioned, obtaining adequate calcium from, let's say, taking 2 cups of milk a day, then I don't think it's necessary for us to take the calcium supplement, because we also want to avoid that hitting the upper limit also of calcium intake a day. So try to go for diet first.
Correct. Yeah, we always advise food first before going for the medicine or supplements.
Dietitian.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Debone ikan bilis. Does it have less calcium?
Yes, because actually the calcium is coming from the edible bones lah. That's why we normally ask for sardines. I mean, low calcium, low sodium canned sardines, or if not ikan bilis. So if you debone it, then there's going to be lesser calcium in that.
Okay, next question is for Timmy, I guess. I have been prescribed 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day. Is it still necessary for me to take other high calcium foods?
Okay, so this one I think like we mentioned, trying to avoid that 2,000 mg of calcium a day, that limit. So if you're already being prescribed 1,000 mg of calcium a day, I would suggest from your diet wise, maybe we try and aim for about 800 mg of calcium a day lah. So that still sits well within the daily recommended intake for yourself in particular, but also not exceeding the upper limit.
Yeah, so it's more like going for a moderate amount of calcium lah in your diet. Okay, so next question is, when in the sun, does it mean directly with the sun shining on us, or just walking in an open space outdoor without sun shining directly on us? For vitamin D lah, I suppose this is asking.
So we will recommend you to have some sun on your skin, because remember that the skin is the one that is converting
converting the UV rays to give us our vitamin D. So if you are working outdoors but not in a sheltered environment, that's not going to give you enough sunlight at all. So definitely talking about direct sun, but remember not too much, about 5 to 30 minutes every day, that would be adequate.
Yeah, and then also, yeah, the timing that Timmy recommended, right, which is between 10 to 3. Yeah. Okay. So next question is, okay, I think it's a bit more of a general question. Egg yolk cholesterol. Okay, so recent nutritional studies have shown that so yes, the liver produces 75% of the cholesterol in our body. So is it actually safe to have egg yolks daily while reducing meat, seafoods? And is it active for a healthy lady or man in their 50s at about 62? Okay, regardless of the weight or the age
yeah.
I would say, okay, so actually eggs, yeah, it's a very controversial issue because, okay, first thing to note is dietary cholesterol is not directly correlating to your blood cholesterol. So it's not like you eat cholesterol, it will directly cause your blood cholesterol to go up. So, but eating excessive amounts of dietary cholesterol will cause your serum cholesterol to go up. But I would say saturated fat, high amounts of saturated fat intake would more directly affect your blood cholesterol. So I wouldn't say you need to reduce your meat, but you need to reduce your intake of fatty meat. You need to take more lean meat. Seafood, seafood is okay, I guess, except if you don't take those that are excessively high in cholesterol. So like egg yolks, if you eat some, it's okay.
I think, yeah, it's still okay.
Yeah, it's still okay. So, but I mean, if you're eating like 5 yolks a day, no lah, it's a bit much.
I think
lah.
1 egg yolk, I think that's still okay.
Still okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Regardless of the age.
Okay.
Okay, I think Gloria wants you to show the slide before the examples of one serving of
which our colleagues will help us to screen that, show that slide. So maybe we move on to the next question.
Okay. Okay, I think this next question is also for Timmy. Does decaf coffee affect our health?
Not really, I think, because when we talk about bone health, right, we are talking about caffeinated beverages. So if you were to go for decaf coffee, sure, why not? And I think if we are talking about decaf coffee, we can definitely have it with our meal.
We don't need to space it away lah.
Alright, so another question is, isn't it better? Sorry. The next question is, isn't it better to be exposed to the sun earlier than the recommended 11 to 3? What do you think?
I think early in the morning, it depends on where you are, I guess, because you know the sun moves also. So
Yeah.
I think 10 to 3 is more of a generic afternoon sun kind of recommendations from the Singapore guidelines lah. So if you want, you can do it earlier, but it really depends on how much sunlight you're going to get at that point of time.
And also because like I mentioned, right, like it's actually the wavelength, getting the correct wavelength. That's why it's not recommended that you go in the evening. The sun is not at the correct wavelength to give you the vitamin D that you need. So if the sun is like giving you a shadow that's longer than yourself, right, you are not going to be producing your vitamin D. So that's why the recommendation is set at a timing lah. Yeah. Okay. Next question for Timmy, I guess. I bought or both of us, whichever, okay. I bought for the first time the expensive healthier salt, pan salt, claims to have lesser sodium compared to regular salt. They recommended. Okay, I think
we need to look into the ingredient list and all, because sometimes when products actually have those kind of lesser sodium,
we make it up with something else.
they make it up, something else. So we want to make sure that you are not taking something else that is also harmful in that amount in replacement of the low salt lah.
So often it's high. They use like potassium chloride. That's why it's lower in sodium. So I mean, usually if you don't have other medical conditions, right, like high potassium, like if you have kidney issues, then I would steer clear lah. Okay, but the thing is that if you generally
I think it's fine. It's just that it's a good substitute lah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think a question for Timmy. Where can you test your muscle and bone loss
Okay, this one, you need to check in with your doctors. Okay, so either your GP or a polyclinic doctor saying that
maybe you want to check out your bone density, so then they can order that test for you.
Okay, so the next question,
I think it's for both of us.
both of us are the question. Okay, 3 cups of coffee per day, is it
It's
considered
too much.
too much? Okay, for bone health wise, what do you think, Chile?
I don't think it's too much.
I think we just need to space it away. Okay.
And depending, because we do understand that some people need coffee, right? But we do also know that caffeine is going to influence your bone health. Okay, so ideally try to reduce the amount of caffeine that you're taking a day, especially when you're trying to optimize your bone health, and space it away lah. So if there's possibility to find an alternative, that'd be better.
But I would say, right, more importantly than anything is to space it away from your meals lah, because other than calcium, actually affects a lot of other nutrient absorption like iron as well. Yeah, and yeah, like I mentioned also, sometimes you take too much, right? It causes heart palpitation, right? So that one is a bit for your heart health also, right? So it's a bit subjective. Some people, caffeine doesn't even affect them, right? So you take 3 cups, it's nothing. But I guess if you take 3 cups and it's like right with your meals, then yes, it is not
it
good.
may
It's
affect
too
the
much.
nutrient absorption.
Okay. Okay, next one. Can calcium cause kidney stone?
Yes, that's why we want to make sure that you're taking adequate amounts, but not excessively. Okay, so aiming for the 800 to 1,000 mg, that is a safe recommended calcium intake a day.
Adequate hydration is also very important lah, to help prevent this
From happening.
kidney
Yeah.
stone development. There are other types of kidney stones also lah, just to know. Okay, the next question is brand's essence of chicken and bird's nest okay to consume for diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure patients? Okay, I think this is a plural of a general question.
I think that okay, because the two products, right, it can be high in salt and sugar.
Yeah. So I would say essence of chickens. Now often they try to produce those that are lower in salt lah. But I would say sorry. Can you hear me? Sorry. A bit lower in salt, but still a bit got some salt lah. Taking too much is not great.
And because our daily recommended is less than 5 grams of salt a day, right? Having this additional chicken essence
It's going to give you the additional salt,
correct,
which your diet itself is really going to give you quite a bit. So if it's possible,
not for any other reasons, try to avoid having it too often.
I guess once a week is still okay. Bird's nest, I would say those that are sold the bottled ones, right? Commercially, they're often quite high in sugar. They're often packaged with rock sugar or honey, right? I would say it's not great for diabetes patients, right? Yeah. As for cholesterol patients, still to note that too much sugar also for your overall lipid profile lah, I wouldn't say it's the best. So I would say, okay, for chicken's essence and bird's nest, right? Take in moderation lah. Once a week still okay lah. Okay. Next question. How much chestnuts of scallop? What scallop can a diabetic patient take each day? I don't know. Scallop.
I think for chestnut wise, it's still a form of nuts and all that, right? So it won't really influence your diabetes control. More towards it may add a little bit of calories lah. I mean, if you're taking chestnuts.
Okay, I think because chestnuts still do contain carbohydrates, so moderate amounts. Yeah. So I would say again 1 handful, like nuts. The chicken in excessive amounts is still carbohydrates. But for scallop,
I think this one we need to bring it back.
what? I'm not. Roasted chestnut. Okay, yeah, okay. So I would say
it's the same.
okay, it's the same. Okay, so I would say for snacks, right? Still again, try to keep it to 1 handful because the carbs do add up. I would say, yeah, a bit here and there lah. I would say everything in moderation. Yeah.
Okay, we have the next question. Can diabetic patients or individuals take a banana every morning for breakfast? I guess that depends on how much carbohydrate you're taking at breakfast already. If let's say you're already taking quite a heavy breakfast, let's say for example a bowl of rice, we would suggest taking a banana or a fruit, any kind of fruit, away from that meal, because we wouldn't want to be giving your body too much carbohydrate, which breaks down to sugar at that one meal. Okay, so it's not wrong to take, but if you have a large meal, then stay away.
I would say also overall fruits just for diabetes patients, keep it to 2 a day maximum. Yeah, so I guess if you take 1 banana at breakfast, only 1 more at the rest of the day. No, not like 3 or 4. That's too much. Okay. Okay, next one. I think for Team A to answer, it was reported that calcium supplements may lead to vascular calcification and formation of plaque. Is it then safe to take 2,000?
I think this one comes back to that key point of trying not to exceed our daily calcium intake. So definitely, if you are able to achieve them from diet, then don't take the calcium supplements, because there's also risk of overeating on calcium.
Let's say we take too much of it.
Yeah, because I think over a certain limit, also the 2,000 milligrams a day, it does increase your risk of atherosclerosis, which are plaques, calcium plaques developing your vessels. So yeah, that is the thing to note. The limit lah. Okay, next one. Understand that diabetics cannot take durian. It's not true.
You can
take durian.
in
Just in moderation.
appropriate amount. So this one I like to tell my patients that one serving, so we're aiming for 2 serving of fruits a day. So one serving is actually 2 small seeds of durian. We're not talking about a kilo of durian. We're talking about like 2 fleshy seeds. Okay, so if you can limit to about 4 fleshy seeds a day, then you're welcome to take a durian. But if you can't control and you will likely overeat, then that's not do it.
Yeah, so there's actually no fruits that diabetic patients can't eat. You can eat everything. It's just in moderation
and in the right amount.
Yeah, that's all. Okay. Okay. It's the following a good daily diet plan. Breakfast, cooked oats with 2 eggs and chia seeds, topped with raw pumpkin seeds, walnuts, and cocoa powder. I mean, okay, that's just breakfast.
It sounds like it's a meal that has protein, quite a bit of protein, and then the fiber is coming from the chia seed and the oats. It sounds good. If you are taking that much protein at your breakfast, the only consideration I may say is maybe at lunch and dinner we reduce a little bit. Okay, because I think that meal itself may be giving you about 1 to maybe a 1.5 kind of protein already. One depending on how much nut seeds you're adding to your mix lah. Okay, so if you're taking that much, then maybe at lunch and dinner we reduce a little bit lah.
Yeah, and I guess you have to look at other your medical conditions, I would say. So generally, if you're okay. Okay, I think because I think Team A mentioned just now what eat some fortified foods, right? So I think one of our participants is asking, what is fortified food?
Fortified food is food that is enriched with a specific nutrient to actually make it more nutritious, or for individuals to actually obtain a specific nutrient from something that is not a common food group of it. Right? So for example, vitamin D fortified cereals, margarine. Normally in those cereal margarine, the amount of vitamin D is not a lot, but when it's vitamin D fortified, it means that they have added a little bit more into that vitamin into that product.
Okay. I think the next because in view of time, right, we'll try to choose the questions which are a bit more related to calcium and diet, like bone health as well, or as the cancer ones. Okay, so the next question is 1 tablet Suncal, that amount, calcium carbonate 450 milligrams and vitamin D 200 units per tablet sufficient for somebody diagnosed with osteoporosis?
I guess it depends on if this is prescribed by the doctors, right? So that is the first key thing that we need to address. But otherwise, if it's just as a general healthy eating, like I mentioned, if you can take it from a diet, you can still manage your risk of osteoporosis. There's no way of turning it back, but we can manage our risk and reduce our risk of fractures, osteoporotic fractures. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, yes. Okay, we'll just take one last question. Okay, so for 50 years old and above, guess to start monitoring and upping your calcium intake is better than not starting at all. Yes, that's true. So many are relying on calcium supplements along with food intake to ensure that it isn't ensure that as it isn't easy to keep monitoring and ensuring what we eat has enough calcium. But when does it get too much, and what would endanger our health in terms of organ calcification? I think
Okay, so I think this one, I've already mentioned in my slides, but I think what I would suggest for all to have a look at is the resources, going back to what actually contains calcium or which food actually contains higher calcium. And to make sure that we are also not overeating, because especially when you're pairing it with a supplement, there's that risk of overeating calcium and resulting in those health risks. So if you are taking any calcium supplement, do go and have a look at the resources, look back to think whether the calcium supplement is necessary or whether you can still just meet it with your diet.
Yeah, that is true, because it's very hard to say. Sometimes you don't realize that your calcium intake is going high, but usually, I mean, the body does self-regulate. It's just that if you're constantly eating like more than 2,000 milligrams a day,
It cause some
issues, it does increase your risk of like arteriosclerosis and plaque development lah. But I would say sometimes it's quite hard. It's quite an insidious thing. So I would say moderation. If you're taking supplements, moderation for your food wise. Okay, I think that's all the questions we can take for today.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Yes, okay, so I hope most of the questions you asked have been answered. We actually answered quite a fair bit today. So hopefully this session has been insightful, has been useful for you. So just to end our session, because we kind of overrun a bit to accommodate the questions that were coming in, just to let you know, we are having our last talk for March upcoming at the end of this month, 30th March. It's called How Much Do You Know About Osteoarthritis and How Do You Manage It? This talk is being conducted by our nurse clinician. So if you are interested about osteoarthritis, how to prevent it, what are the prevention tips, you can sign up scanning the QR code on screen. Alternatively, click on the link that my colleague just sent in the chat to register. So please note that registration closes on 28th of March 2359. Okay, so yes, before you go, please, we want to hear from you. So please scan the QR code on the left to share with us your feedback, whether you find the talk useful, what are the other topics that you wish to hear from us. And alternatively, I did see some of you asking about Health Library. If you wish to visit our website, you can scan the QR code on the top right. There is a bunch of nutrition resources. On top of that, we have our exercise resources as well as information on different medical conditions. If you want to do some self-learning, self-reading, please feel free to access our Health Library. We have more than 900 resources over there. And it's free to use, free to download, free to share with everyone, your friends and your family. And then also, if you wish to be in touch or stay updated of our latest events happening in Central Singapore, you can follow us on our Singapore Patient Conference Facebook page, as well as Instagram. To follow, you can just scan the QR code and then you can follow us. Any latest talk or any health wellness activities, we will be posting on these two platforms. Okay, so we have officially come to the end of today's Health Talk session. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I will loop the QR codes as well as QR codes that I've just shared on screen, so you can take your time to scan and do whatever you need to do. So till then, see you on the during the next Health Talk, and have a nice day. Goodbye.